Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about reclaiming lost power. In spiritual psychology, personal power or life energy is considered to be something real and concrete. We can lose power in many ways. It can be given away in relationship, can be taken by violence, bullying, or abuse, drained off by chronic illness, neglect, grief, loss, and long-term stress can also take our power. Life energy can also be lost through accidents, surgery, birth trauma, or by experiencing or witnessing a distressing event. The good news is that personal power can also be retrieved, restored, returned, and regained. Working directly with power is the essence of much ancient shamanic practice, but we can also reclaim our own life energy using the modern techniques of hypnotherapy, body-centered mindfulness, and the inner journeys of spiritual psychology. Whatever resources you choose, directly reclaiming personal power grants access to resources and renewal that is really profound. Power loss, as I'm talking about it, is usually unrecognized and untreated by standard psychological and medical protocols. Although we all know we have a life force on some level, because it's not measurable, modern medicine has chosen to ignore the idea of personal power altogether. And so it goes untreated. Power loss can contribute to sleep issues, fatigue, apathy, and low immune function. It's my experience that anxiety and depression, trauma, abuse, and neglect all include some form of power loss in them. Even some aspects of learning disabilities and autoimmune disorders could be seen as power imbalance issues to some extent. But regardless of the way that life energy is lost, it's important to know that there are processes that can restore us to wholeness. People will often speak about giving their power away to others or feeling disempowered. And if you have relationships where you feel drained, resentful, or unable to tell the truth, it is likely power loss is happening in that dynamic. And from a spiritual psychology perspective, we take the concept of power loss literally, that although it may be difficult to measure or track in the material world, again, using these tools of shamanism, hypnotherapy, or inner journeys, we're able to conceptualize or concretize the energetic or non-physical realities and work with them directly in really transformative ways. And it is profoundly healing and empowering to take back the life energy we've lost. Power retrieval is an important aspect of self-responsibility and can have profound impact on developing and maintaining healthy boundaries, and how to orient ourselves toward the pain, suffering, and dysfunction of others. Often knowingly or unknowingly, we give our power to other people in relationships, in family systems, or in power dynamics at work, school, and social settings. This tends to be most dramatic for people who have experienced trauma, abuse, or neglect at the hands of an abuser or perpetrator. It sets up a system or a pattern that people are often unconsciously drawn to over and over again in their life. And there's often a series of what I would call wisdom teachings that seem to come with the power retrieval when people are willing to do it, that can have a really positive impact on the way that people orient toward themselves and interact in these different kinds of relationships. Now, power loss in its most damaging or violent aspect could be called soul stealing. And most perpetrators of violence, bullying, or abusive power are blind to the energetic reality that underlies their behavior. But the energetic reality is that one of the main drivers for people who abuse others is power seeking. Abusers and perpetrators usually have some power loss or imbalance themselves. And one way to understand their behavior is that they're seeking to empower themselves by stealing the life energy of others to make up for their own deficits. I worked with a young teenage girl who was the victim of some cyberbullying by what we came to understand as a very insecure and jealous girl. My client was very pretty and popular, did well in school, and the cyberbullying girl didn't have the balls to confront her to her face, but over and over organized chat rooms and get-togethers that intentionally excluded my client. And that can be devastating for a 12 or 13-year-old girl, and most of her school friends were afraid of this bully as well. And the bully made up some funny little code words that she would say to her posse when all the girls were out at lunchtime, and everyone would giggle, and my client had no idea what was happening until one of her friends told her that when the bully said uni and everyone giggled, they were talking about her eyebrows. Now, my client actually did not have a unibrow, but when everyone's laughing at you, whether it's valid or not, it is disempowering. And we did a power retrieval process from this bully, and subsequently my client was able to find a teacher who facilitated a pretty outstanding intervention that one-on-one called every girl who my client had named for an individual interaction about what was happening. And although the bully completely denied it, the bullying behavior stopped, and a few of the girls even directly apologized to my client, which was another level of power restoration for her. So that's a pretty benign example because power can effectively be stolen through physical, sexual, emotional, and social violence. Certainly institutional racism, political violence, and oppression, torture, and genocide are the most extreme and devastating aspects of power stealing. But in truth, those who try to empower themselves by using the life energy of other people are like energetic vampires, doomed to suck the soul substance of others in the dark, unable to tolerate the light of their own truth. Because although power can effectively be stolen through violence and creating fear and terror, the stolen energy cannot actually be used by the perpetrator in a healthy way. Kind of like a blood transfusion requires matching blood types for integration, the life energy of others can never take the place of our own. Ultimately, each of us must manage our own power to be fully functioning. And although it may never show on the surface, perpetrators do suffer in their own particular way. On a soul level, nothing goes unrecognized by the universe, and every action has a consequence or a reaction. Now, not all power exchange between people is violent or intentionally abusive. It's common for lovers, friends, family, and coworkers to attempt to help each other by taking on or carrying the problems, pain, responsibility, or the life energy of their counterparts. And life energy management is complicated. So when a child, a partner, or an elder needs help in caring for themselves or in their life situation, it is imperative for a stronger, more capable person to provide assistance. Caring for the young, the elderly, the sick, or the dying is a healthy, supportive act. And in relationships of all kinds, it's really common for a more capable person to unconsciously agree to take on the life responsibilities of a less capable person. Now, I use the word agree because I believe that the dynamics of all relationships are a series of agreements that we can renegotiate at any time. Ultimately, we're all responsible for our own life energy. When we try to avoid our personal growth work by abdicating our inner responsibilities to someone else, or to try to help another person by managing their problems for them, we are actually harming them on a soul level. The harm in taking too much responsibility for others or not owning our own power is that we perpetuate a dysfunctional system of avoidance, fear, and disempowerment. This is one way to understand the concept of codependency. In codependency, each person is dependent upon the other person for wholeness. And again, there's places where this is appropriate, like caring for an aging parent or helping a friend in a difficult life situation. But when wholeness in relationship depends upon filling in each other's gaps, then the gaps are perpetually reinforced and healthy personal growth is gridlocked. Sooner or later, each person in a codependent relationship deteriorates because their life energy is being sourced through the human counterpart rather than from the universal life source from which we all draw. So this can be the shadow side of being a caregiver or a helper. So we have to be very mindful of our motives when we want to help others by giving from our own life energy. Our personal resources of time, emotional attention, energy, money, and material support are precious. We need to be really conscious and mindful of our motives in giving, especially if we feel depleted or resentful in any way after doing something for others. Often giving is a disguise for trying to buy love, security, or a sense of worthiness with our service. It's important to ask if I'm feeding my ego narrative of myself as a savior, as a martyr, or as a sage. We need to consider if we're robbing the person we intend to help of the opportunities for growth and self-esteem that natural consequences to their action or inaction could provide. Sometimes we even avoid our own needs, problems, and personal growth work by focusing too much on the needs of others. On the other end of the spectrum, we need to be mindful when we need the help of others. Are we using our dependency as a way to avoid facing our fears and responsibilities? Do we collapse or dump our personal power as a way to manipulate others and trade adult love and equality in exchange for neediness, pity, and perpetually being rescued? It has to be acknowledged that we are constantly exchanging life energy with our interactions with other people in a natural and healthy way. In work, at home, in daily life, we talk to people, we have emotions, we have sex, and we interact physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically all the time. And the work is to get conscious about our own functional and dysfunctional patterns of energy management so that we can participate in our own life and the lives of others in a mature and balanced way. As I said, there are many tools that we can use for power retrieval and exchange that are really accessible and helpful. Almost everyone can benefit from a general power retrieval on a regular basis, but particularly if you've been through any kind of physical, emotional, or psychological distress. I recently did a general power retrieval on a client who was coming out of a long-term depression, and their life energy had just been depleted drip by drip through that long, dark experience. General power retrievals really helpful after surgery or giving birth, and it's an important part of healing any kind of trauma. Personal power retrieval and exchange, like I was referring to in the bullying scenario, is when there's a specific perpetrator who is stealing from you, or if you have taken on the life energy of others knowingly or unknowingly. It's a slightly different process in the dynamic of how the power is exchanged. But it's important to know that we can release or give back that which doesn't belong to us, and we can take back that which does belong to us. Personal power exchange can be incredibly healing in emotionally and energetically separating from someone at the end of a relationship, and with children and loved ones as they move into different stages of self-responsibility. If you want to learn more about power retrieval from a shamanic perspective, I'll be doing an Instagram Live with C. Michael Smith, a shaman and Jungian analyst who specializes in healing life-threatening circumstances. Really interesting guy. That will be on our IGTV channel at Open Door Growth on Instagram. I talk even more in depth about reclaiming lost power in my book, Allies and Demons, Working with Spirit for Power and Healing. And there are 2 guided audio inner journeys if you're interested in doing this work yourself that accompany that book. It's available on Amazon and on Audible. And there's a link in the show notes if you want to download the first chapter for free. If you want to find out how spiritual psychology can benefit you in your life or learn more about a personal power retrieval or exchange, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. Thank you so much to my supporters on Patreon, and thank you for listening. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValle McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.